he physically walked over to the church from the White House itself. He didn't drive over in his bulletproof limo, the Beast, as it's nicknamed. He walked over, flanked by lots of Secret Service and other police. A bold statement, I thought, that he was not going to concede the ground. As our next guest says, there's that leftist chants, whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. Well, Donald Trump answered that question, and he held up a book. What was the symbolism of that book and the march? Well, joining us now to talk about it is our friend Joel Pollak, senior editor-at-large at Breitbart.com. Joel, great to see you again. What did you make of the symbology there, of the symbolism of the march, not the drive, and standing in front of a church, holding up a Bible? What did that all mean?
Well, it was electrifying, and I think it'll be remembered as one of the most impressive moments of Donald Trump's presidency. In the face of all of the hostility, the protest, the unrest, he walked right out of the White House through Lafayette Park, which, if you've been to the White House, is where visitors and protesters typically stand when they want to take photographs. He walked right out through that park and then crossed the street and stood in front of the church, which had been burned partially by a mob rioting the night before, and he held a Bible. And in my mind, it was reminding the country what the source of our community really is. What is the source of our republic? It's a constitution, and it's also the Judeo-Christian idea of morality, the difference between right and wrong that underlies that constitution. But even if you're not part of that Judeo-Christian tradition, you don't believe in any of that stuff, we're a civilization based on the word, based on a covenant, at least among each other. And that's what he was doing. He was saying, this is what we're all about. It was almost one of those break the glass moments in case of social emergency. He rebooted the republic in a way. It felt like he was going back to the source code and saying to people, this is who we are. This is what we believe in. We are the people of the book. We're the people of many books. But ultimately, we're the people founded on a belief that there is right and there is wrong, and our purpose on earth is to pursue the good. And it was such a powerful gesture. You see the opinion polls starting to come in about what people want to see done about the National Guard or the military. Overwhelmingly, the American people want the president to bring in the National Guard. There's also a majority of Americans and a plurality of Democrats who want the president to bring in the military. But you're not seeing that reflected in the media. Our media are 100% on the side of the protesters/rioters, and they are quite happy to see unrest if they think it might help remove Donald Trump from office. And indeed, that's the tone of much of the commentary, that wouldn't it be better if Donald Trump weren't president? Donald Trump is somehow to blame for this, even though this all started under Obama. Go back to Occupy Wall Street, go back to Trayvon Martin, go back to Black Lives Matter. It all started under Obama. But wouldn't it be great if Trump wasn't president? And can we blame him for this somehow? And by showing that he's taking decisive action, that he's willing to take responsibility for it, and by showing that he stands with the country's principles. I mean, they burned a church. You know, it's unbelievable. That's not all, by the way. Here in Los Angeles, when the protest, quote unquote, was happening on Saturday, the protest at that point was completely inseparable from the looting and the rioting. There are protests where they've been separated at least by a street or two. But in the Saturday protest, there really was no separation. And the procession marched through a very Jewish area of Los Angeles and vandalized synagogues. And they wrote things like Free Palestine and F Israel on the side of Temple Beth Israel in the Fairfax area of Los Angeles. They ransacked kosher stores. They destroyed stores of people I know in the Jewish community. They destroyed stores over here in Santa Monica of minority-owned businesses, other people I know. They graffitied the public library. You know, it's unbelievable. It's not a war on racism. It's a war against civilization. And I have no patience anymore for the people who say, well, that's the rioters, those are the looters, that's not part of the peaceful protest. I understand that subjectively, that is in terms of how they feel, most of the people who showed up to the protests believe they're doing the right thing, they feel good about it, they want to say something. But not every peaceful protest is lawful. The reason we ask people to apply for permits before they have a protest is so that it can be done safely. And if you're going to occupy a lot of space, you're going to take up a lot of space, you're going to have a march, you're going to disrupt traffic, you're going to inconvenience other people. We all live in a community, and you get to say whatever you want if you're by yourself on a sidewalk. But if you're going to bring a large group of people to say it in front of my lawn, we have to have some ground rules so that we can all go back to our lives. So we have this permitting process where you coordinate with local government and with the police to make sure everything is safe and everybody who wants to be heard can be heard. That's not going on. You just have people calling protests, showing up somewhere, and then they say, peaceful protest, peaceful protest. But what they do is they're diverting law enforcement to protect them and their right to protest, because they do have a right to protest, even though a bit of a stretch to say they can do it whenever and wherever they want. But anyway, they're diverting police resources while the looters go one block over and start ransacking the stores and fighting people and knocking people out, and in some cases shooting people. That's happened now a couple of times. So I have no patience for it, because in the old days of community organizing, I mean, imagine that, organizing a protest. In the old days, you had responsibility for making sure that there was good behavior on the part of the participants. You also were there to ferret out any provocateurs who might have slipped in among the protests and might have tried to cause problems. That was part of what organizing a protest was about. Somehow our community organizers today lack that training. They don't have those skills or the will to do it. They just leave public order up to the police. Meanwhile, the looters come in convoys and they start smashing the plate glass of the store windows.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.